Everyone who's ever been interested in anime or JRPGs has heard of Danganronpa at one point, but as an older gamer, it completely missed me. Not only had I mostly stopped playing video games at the time, but I was pretty much a broke-ass college student living on like $50 a month, so no PSP for me. I understand that I'm basically a boomer when it comes to most fans of this game, but with the rise of Among Us, Danganronpa has suddenly exploded in popularity, partly in thanks to the numerous animatics of Among Us themed executions and that damn catchy theme song. I was not immune, because I had heard of it but never really been interested in it, but then quarantine hit, and I've been in my apartment since last April. Please feed me new media. It's all I have. Like most good visual novel-esque games, Danganronpa is mostly character-driven, and while I have my complaints about the game, the characters hold their own. I haven't really watched the anime, mostly because it's stressful, and I honestly can't take any more stress right now. Therefore, I will only be grading characters from the title games. So no anime or Ultra Despair girls. And trust me, I have it on good authority that it'd be best to leave out Ultra Despair girls altogether, mostly to avoid the discourse. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments. That leaves us with Danganronpa 1, 2, and V3. Trust me, having to fit these characters into a list of 10 alone was taxing enough. This countdown is going to be a little different. I will be judging these characters on their narrative importance throughout the series, rather than their likability, fan reception, or even personal favorites, because many of my personal favorites actually aren't on this list at all. So if you see a fan favorite or a character that everyone hates on this list, don't be surprised. Spoilers abound. If you haven't played this game, please experience it yourself. Just trust me. So, without any further ado, my name is Dr. Cannon, and welcome to your consultation. Number 10, Leon Kuata. Like I stated before, I'm not putting these characters on the list because I like them. In fact, Leon isn't even liked by the game's creator Kazutaka Kodaka, who describes Leon and his victim Sayaka's existence as truly miserable. However, Leon is an important narrative device. As the first murderer, Leon sets a precedent not just for the game but for the entire series. Leon is the first person in the series to succumb to the pressures of the killing game. At first glance, Leon only acted in self-defense, but not only did he not have to break into Makoto's unlocked bathroom, he didn't have to stab Sayaka when she could no longer fight back, a point made by Celeste, who understands selfish impulse more than anybody else in the cast. Leon defines the game's main ethos, which is despair, hopelessness, and in Leon's case, desperate anger, bring out people's dark sides and make them act in unpredictable ways. His resulting execution is still one of the most brutal, a callback to the original concept of the Blackened getting ripped to shreds by a Gatling gun, where he gets beaten to death by baseballs. But it leaves you with an eerie feeling of disgust, dreading not just the next execution, but any one that comes after that, and only a select few are so memorable. Speaking of executions, number 9, Kaede Akamatsu. Kaede is another first execution, but this one is on the list for subverting expectations. By the time Danganronpa V3 rolls around, we know what to expect. We know the first Blackened is gonna have a breakdown, get dragged by the neck, and that'll be particularly brutal. Kaede subverts the expectations in two ways. Originally introduced as the protagonist, you're under the impression that Kaede is in denial about Suichi's apparent guilt, and exposing him will cause the same pain it did with Makoto and Sayaka. However, the game flips everything on its head and gives you the first hint that not everything is as it seems. The second comes when Kaede is exposed as the Blackened. Usually the first Blackened screams and cries and is denial about what's about to happen. Kaede calmly accepts her fate and not only bids goodbye to Suichi, but to the player in a way, saying uncovering the truth is hard but necessary to bring an end to everything. Also, brief side note here, but her execution also defines how much more brutal the executions are in V3 because, holy shit. Number 8. Kyoko Kurogiri. Someone once said that a good sidekick leaves you wondering whether or not they could be the main character. I spent all of Trigger Happy Havoc wondering why Kyoko wasn't the main character, but I digress. She did something important for the franchise. She's the gold standard for secondary protagonists in this game. Because of Kurogiri, every sidekick character after her just doesn't seem good enough. When you break her down to her bare essentials, Kyoko is a very basic broken bird anime trope. Female secondary protag is usually stoic or tsundere with family issues and a scar of some kind. But if this was an action JRPG, she'd probably have a gun or secretly have healing magic or just randomly be able to kick ass for for no reason. She should be entirely ordinary compared to most bombastic characters like Celeste and Sakura, but honestly, she is one of the smartest characters in the series next to Kokichi and Komaeda, which makes me wonder, what if she and Byakuya switched roles? Oh, sorry, don't mind me, I'm just, thinking. Number 7, Jihiro Fujisaki. Fair warning here, I will be referring to Chihiro as they throughout this part. Like Naoto Shirogane from Persona 4, Chihiro is a familiar trope from early 2000s Japanese video games and anime. A young person who struggles with Japan's stringent gender roles and copes by dressing up as the opposite sex. This trope and its nuances are often misinterpreted by Western audiences, which is bound to happen. Cultural differences always get lost in the translation. However, this leads to a lot of conflict surrounding how Chihiro should be referenced. Nowadays, Chihiro's portrayal could be seen as insensitive, but with good intentions at best, or transphobic at the worst. However, this discourse overshadows how much influence Chihiro has over the plot. It takes talent to be one of the first characters to die and still be relevant throughout the story. Chihiro created Alter Ego, a major staple in the series that, while some would claim is just a Deus Ex Machina generator, is still responsible for some of the best and most heart-wrenching scenes in the game. And while I know that Alter Ego and Chiaki are their own characters, I will still say that with my entire heart that she is only there because of Chihiro. In a way, they became brave through their creations, and because of that, I can unironically say that Chihiro is a hero, and that it's a pity that they weren't alive to see it. Number 6, Nagito Komaeda. Now you're probably wondering why Komaeda isn't higher on this list, and honestly, I've got nothing. Listen, love him or hate him, you can't deny the monopoly he has not just on the story, but the community at large. For almost 10 years, I thought Komaeda was the main villain of the franchise, and Junko and Monokuma were just his Harley Quinn. I saw him everywhere, and if you asked me, he was the only character anyone ever cared about. He monopolizes much of Danganronpa 2, which is what a good antagonist is supposed to do. He lingers on the edge of everyone's mind like a threat to the point where it's a relief when he's gone. You can see it in the reactions of Let's Players when they find him dead. He never really releases his stranglehold on you in the end though, and I'll be honest with you, Komaeda is actually one of my least favorite characters in the whole franchise. However, out of all of the characters on this list, Komaeda is the only one who is here just on the merits of being a great character. Number 5, Kokichi Oma. And listen, guys, I know I'm gonna get some angry comments that Komaeda is lower than Kokichi, and yes, he is my personal favorite, so I'm a little biased, but just hear me out, okay? Like Chihiro, Kokichi's character often gets drowned out in the discourse between Kokichi did nothing wrong or Kokichi is an evil rat. He's one of the most polarizing characters in this series. I have never spoken to anyone who's just ambivalent about Kokichi. They either love him or they hate him. But like I keep saying, that's not why we're here. Kokichi is the personification of Danganronpa V3's main theme, lies. They even say that Kokichi Oma is the human embodiment of a lie. According to him, lies have infinite possibilities, like fiction. You know, the fiction that the main characters are trapped in and can't leave until someone wins. Kokichi is the only character who outsmarted Monokuma and by extension the game itself, because not even the game can decide who's speaking in the penultimate trial. Kokichi is walking fiction. Everything about him, down to his ultimate talent, is completely implausible. Just like Danganronpa's killing game. Okay, you know what? This is a bit confusing, so I'm just gonna phrase it like this. Kokichi is impossible in personality and in backstory. Danganronpa is impossible, mostly because there's no technology to create sentient murder bears. Yet, he understands the game more than anyone else. So it's not the dilemma of whether or not Kokichi did nothing wrong or whether Kokichi was evil, it's that Kokichi was right all along. Number 4. Hajime Hinata. The only protagonist on this list, Hajime Hinata subverted expectations right off the bat. By the time you first meet him, you know he's not like Makoto. JRPG protagonists inspired the isekai genre, meaning that the character is supposed to be a somewhat blank slates for players to project themselves onto. And let's be honest here, that's pretty much what Makoto was. However, Hajime is the odd one out of the 3, 4, or maybe 5, protagonists. Going back on my own experiences again, I didn't know that Suichi and Makoto were even protagonists. I thought Hajime was the protagonist for all the games. While that could be thanks in part to Komaeda's popularity, Hajime is the most relatable, being more concerned about what other people think of him and being more suspicious about everyone around him. In a genre where the characters are slightly bland with a side of wish fulfillment, it's a breath of fresh air to have a character say, "I am my own person because I dare to hope." He also has more of a spine, it just makes sense of him to be the most beloved protagonist. Number 3, Junko Enoshima. The woman, the myth, the plot device. Junko Enoshima casts a massive shadow over the series, both in canon and outside of it. Some people call Junko the greatest JRPG villain of all time, others despise her with every inch of their being, and others are just kind of meh. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you think of Junko, because she will always be there, no matter how inconvenient or ham-fisted it is. And let's be honest here, Junko is whatever the plot needs her to be. The ultimate fashionista, the ultimate despair, the ultimate analyst, but she's so damn charismatic that she makes it work. When it comes right down to it, she's responsible for everything. She even has a spell on Kadaka himself, who's once said that he can't imagine the mastermind being anyone other than Junko Enoshima, no matter how, and I quote, boring and repetitive it is. Number 2, Sumugi Shurigane. I'm just gonna be honest, I didn't want to put her on this list, much less over Junko, but I have a reason. Shurigane is the most powerful character in Danganronpa. Yes, more powerful than Junko because she can just become Junko. I don't presume to speak for Kadaka. However, it seems like Shurigane embodies the side of him that's reluctant to let go of the series. As, polarizing as she is, one thing's for sure, she wants Danganronpa to continue. She wants the series to keep going. More content, more killing games, no matter how ridiculous or unhinged the plot gets, that's what we want. That's what the game is for. But when does it end? Some people, like Shurigane, don't care. They want more. But at the end of the day, everything has to end. When Junko cheerfully waves goodbye at the end, the killing game is truly over. No matter how satisfied or how cheated you feel. And Shurigane is one of those people that feels cheated, angry, and disillusioned, much like a lot of people who played the last trial of this game. Before she dies, she waves goodbye to Danganronpa, goodbye to the players, and goodbye to the world she created before she's crushed under debris. In real life, endings are usually unremarkable, but a lot of them aren't. And if you love something, it always ends too soon, and sometimes you have to kill the part of yourself that wants to hang on. So before I want to get to number 1, I want to throw in a couple of honorable mentions. First, Maizono. I chose Leon over her because the executions were more important to the deaths than my opinion. She did end up succumbing to the killing game and, got really desperate just like Leon, but I don't know, I felt like I had to give Leon his due diligence just because of the brutalness of his execution and that Sayaka's murder really wasn't as brutal as some of the other ones. The next is Toko and Genocide Jack. I cut her because I actually intentionally left out Ultra Despair Girls, like I said before. A lot of people were telling me, you don't want to get involved in the discourse surrounding that game, and I've seen parts of the game, and I agree. So yeah, we're not including that. The next is Chiaki, and while she is a fan favorite, she just wasn't subversive enough for me. She didn't have the same panache as the other characters. I really don't know. I still feel like Chihiro is the more important character, although I will say props for actually making me cry when she died. She was my favorite character. Number 1. Monokuma. Even though this bear is just an extension of Junko's diabolical schemes, that doesn't stop him from being the face of the continued battle between hope and despair in this game. He embodies the whole thing, and not gonna lie, his humor is probably the best in the game compared to the human characters. I'm sure I'm not the first person who's pointed this out, but I gotta bring it up again just to prove my point. Look at the first game. Every time a character gets executed, his despair side, the black side, leads them to their deaths. When the ultimate despair finally dies, Hope, the white side, walks Junko to her execution. Monokuma is a fantastic visual representation of what this game is. You've got the dark and the light, and you put it into this bear, and it's the errant silliness. He defines the whole series. Honestly, I would say he's one of the best, because it's just fun to have an evil character messing with the protagonists. He's goofy looking, but he is a whole ass menace to anyone who crosses his path. And the one time he's on your side, you're like, oh shit, despite all the horrible stuff he's done. A YouTuber actually once said it was like an old friend had joined the party. And that is what an iconic character is, a familiar face that gives you an odd sense of nostalgia. Their portrayal is usually the barometer of how good the game is going to be. I don't even go here, and Monokuma remains, to me, one of the most iconic faces in gaming. So what do you think? Do you agree with these characters? Do you think I left any out? Do you want to yell at me? Would you like me to go in depth about any of these characters and why they're so important to the series? Let me know in the comments. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Tumblr, and Instagram. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. The lollipops are on your way out, and I will see you in the next video.